Welcome to Standard Deviation.
Hello, Ciara.
Hey, Kevin.
How's it going?
It's going all right.
Cool.
Yeah, we have like 5 years worth of current events to cover.
Yeah. 2020 is a weird year. What is this, October 10th, 2020?
Kind of an understatement, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, everybody who's listening to this in 2020 or probably for the next decade will know what we're talking about. 2020 is it's accelerating. Things are heating up.
Yeah. And we haven't podcasted in a month.
Yeah, we haven't. That's true.
Lots of stuff has happened.
Yeah.
Oregon almost burned down.
Oh God, I fucking totally forgot about that.
That's what I'm saying. We have like 5 years worth of current events.
God, that's right. Yeah, so Oregon almost burnt down. We had those wildfires. We had at least one day, maybe several, when Oregon had the worst air quality in the world. Mm-hmm. At the same time, my hometown was flooded. For the first time in 16 years, a hurricane landed. Same day, 16 years later to the day, in the exact same spot.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And then they just had another one, I think, last night.
Wow.
I'm not even keeping up anymore,
Yeah, we were like right next to the the level 1 evacuation line, which meant just be ready.
Yeah.
So we were right next to the be ready warning. So we just got ready anyways. We just packed some bags and started filling up the tub with water and that sort of thing. But it turned out to be okay. They took care of it pretty well.
Yeah, that was pretty intense for like a solid 2 or 3 days. I was pretty worried. I had a lot of other stuff going on too. That's what's so crazy is every time there's a big disaster, I'm just like, all right, add it to the list, got so much other shit to deal with. But it turns out, yeah, I got curious about how the evacuation zones work because we realized looking at the map that it was the next county over, like just the county. It was a county-shaped evacuation zone. So we're like, does that mean our county just doesn't do evacuations? Like, should we run,
Yeah, a lot of it was unclear because, this was unprecedented. They weren't prepared for it. We're not California. We don't usually get wildfires like this.
Yeah.
So it mostly hit Clackamas County, which is next to Multnomah County, which is where we're at. And, it was really bad there. And so they had evacuation warnings, and there wasn't really any clear news coming from Multnomah County, except like, I don't know if I can remember right, their Twitter account just said, there's no news, no evacuation, and it would. But like I said, like with this year, like news comes by so fast, and so I'm looking at the next county over, and they're going through a lot, and it was a little annoying that Multnomah County was just kind of quiet about it. They just put out something every once in a while, say no, there's still nothing.
Yeah, what got me about it is that I was getting really curious about that, and like I was starting to worry because like government's pretty splintered and like ineffective at a lot of stuff. And I give a lot of credit to government workers and government as an institution, but let's be honest, it doesn't always work.
Well, and especially this year, I feel like everyone, including myself, is less confident in these systems. Like,
sure. And and we can talk in a minute about what caused these wildfires. But when I got curious. So I was worried that maybe our county just was behind the game, because I started following all these accounts on Twitter, like government accounts, emergency accounts, and they were exactly what you said. They're just like, oh, we're not evacuating yet. Everybody just chill out. And I'm like, that's not enough information, like why are we not evacuating? It's so close. So then I started looking at topographical maps, started comparing the fire maps with maps of terrain, and that's when I realized that the county line is like the tree line. Mm-hmm. Like the next county is so wooded.
Right.
Like that's why it was spreading so rapidly. And we're a solid probably 30 blocks from any major woods. So that's when I started to calm down a little bit.
Yeah, we're still very green. There's trees in everyone's yards, so I can still see it happening.
And with how dry it is, like if one house catches, that could be a whole neighborhood. You know?
Yeah, one of my friend's houses, she lives out in Estacada, which is in the middle of Clackamas. Like, they had a real close call. Their house almost burned down. I think the firefighters actually, like, bulldozed a fire line where I think they just kind of dig a trench in the dirt, like, basically around their house. They went through their yard to do that, and that saved their house. But
I think 10% of the state was evacuated, wasn't it?
I believe it,
Some outrageous number.
It was huge.
Yeah. And so those who have been listening since around March will remember that I've been pontificating about the collapse of civilization, really just the degradation of critical infrastructure systems.
Kevin's really patting himself on the back here.
I am. And it's not like, I mean, to be fair, it's not. I didn't solve any difficult puzzle. I just kind of looked at the way the world works, and Donald Trump's president, and there's a global pandemic, so you can sort of see how the dominoes are going to fall. And so every time something crazy happens, I'm like, all right, how is this related to the
He laughs gleefully, and he's like, I was right, and he's very proud of himself.
Often.
And he's very happy.
I don't do that. I just kind of grin like I'm doing right now. I'm just like, hey, do you remember that one time I said this was going to happen, and then it did?
Yeah.
But yeah, so you pointed out you read this article. So I read an article. I was too exhausted to do a lot of research, but I did a little searching on the different firefighting websites and shit. And the first thing I saw was that there were some notices from like a month or two back that the rangers had shut down a bunch of state parks because there was so much human feces in the state parks that they had to like stop and clean everything up. It was like hazardous. They didn't have enough staff. And I'm like, well, what the hell's happening there? Like, why is there all this human shit in the woods?
Where was this?
Just all over the state.
In Oregon?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I'm like, well, what's going on here? So then I did more digging, and I realized people are unemployed and quarantined, so they're camping more. They have nothing to do other than riot and camp. Mm-hmm. So that's what they're doing. And when they're camping more, they're not obeying the rules. It's just more people not obeying the rules. So then you had park rangers out there literally picking up human shit when they should be doing things like, I don't know,
why aren't
fire
they burying
watches.
their shit?
I don't know. They're bad humans.
Ugh.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
Like, I don't camp. I don't really know what I don't know the rules and everything. But, like, if there's somewhere to put your shit there.
Yeah.
Like, come on. Don't just.
Even animals bury it. Well,
yeah.
some of them do.
Some of them.
The good
some of them
ones.
just pretend. Cats just, like, scratch
Dig
around
around the
next
floor.
to it. It's weird. Vestigial
They're
instinct.
trying. They're making an effort at least.
But yeah, so I was like, all right, so that's at least one direct link between the pandemic and the wildfires. If you're short-staffed enough that you have to close parks to the public, then you definitely don't have fire watches and all the shit that you need. And then you read an article about how there weren't enough controlled burns this year.
Yeah, it was a fascinating article. Damn, I wish I could remember the author's name because I really recommend it. We'll post it on our Twitter. The headline is something like, "We know how to solve wildfires. Why is no one listening?" Something like that. And, the rhetoric that's been coming out is like, well, this is global warming. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. But that's actually not the whole story. Global warming is playing an effect, but it's actually, it comes down to the fact that we do not do controlled burns. And we have for 100 years now, actually, whenever there's a fire, we just put it out. And before, people started doing that, fires would naturally erupt and they would burn down part of the forest, and that was just sort of a natural part of the ecosystem. And if you go to Oregon or Washington or even, no, not really California.
I thought they were the ones that stopped doing burns.
Well, it's all up at the West Coast. So especially in Oregon and Washington, you see these beautiful, like, lush forests, and they're lovely. It's part of what makes, the Pacific Northwest so beautiful. But they actually shouldn't look like that. A healthy forest should look kind of patchy, like almost like a checkerboard. And because it's not, because we just stamp out fires when we see them, and we don't do these controlled burns for a number of reasons. The article really goes into it. A lot of it, it's just like there's a lot of red tape to go through, a lot of bureaucracy. Whereas if there's just a fire, well, you just go and take care of it. But if you have to do a controlled fire, well, there's just a lot of issues. A lot of people don't like it. People, you don't want the smoke in the air, yada, yada. All this other stuff. A lot of it's tied with money. But anyways, then you add global warming to it, and you get a hot summer in the Pacific Northwest where usually, it's
pretty mild.
Beautiful summers.
Yeah.
It usually doesn't stay super dry for that long. We're known for being very wet. And
very moist.
and then all of a sudden the conditions are perfect for these massive wildfires because there's way too many trees.
Yeah, and didn't you say that there was an issue of it was pandemic related, right? You said that there was.
I think that was part of it. I think they canceled a lot of controlled burns this year because of the pandemic.
Yeah, because they were short-staffed. Yeah, cause that's right.
But even
everything's a skeleton crew. That's what I was saying. Is like,
yeah,
critical infrastructure. You need your crew. They can't just take a day off.
Yeah, and I don't mean to like understate that. Like, that is a problem as well. But we are something like 100 years behind on controlled burns. And I was reading something to the effect, like, we need, like, and I'm pulling this number out of my ass, don't direct quote me on that, but something like 20 million acres need to be burned before we can catch up to where we should be.
Man, I totally misremembered that. I thought that was just about California, because I read that
it was mostly centered in California, but it was relevant to Oregon and Washington as well.
Yeah, it sounded crazy, because like I know we do controlled burns somewhat here, and maybe they do them somewhat in California. But you were saying, like, you linked it all the way back to William James, which is crazy, because he's one of my, I wouldn't say heroes. He used to be one of my heroes, and I read more of his work, and he's brilliant and all. But anyway, it had something to do with like naturalism.
Yeah, he wrote something. I had to read this
years?
paragraph like 4 times to really understand the relevance.
Sounds
but
like
it was
William James.
Well, he didn't write it. It was just talking about how it was linked. But basically, sometime after a war, like, he wrote something to the effect of, like, we need to stop fighting each other and start fighting nature. And that sort of philosophy or thought really took hold in the West. And so I guess that turned into this mentality of, if there's a fire, just stamp it out, rather than like let it burn out the way it would naturally, or like that sort of thing.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, and for some reason that philosophy, I mean, I'm sure no one can really point to it now, but it just kind of kept on generation after generation until all of a sudden we're 100 years behind on controlled burns.
Fires are weird. They're like, I mean, there's all these forces of nature that are just like, that if they act up, you could be totally fucked, and there's not anything you can do about it. But like, most of them are kind of predictable. Like, if there's an earthquake, you could get crushed, you could fall in a crack. Mm-hmm. That's about it, right? With a flood.
I think a lot of people die from like shards of glass hitting them or something impaling them in the
like
wind.
Structures. Yeah.
Or no, I'm thinking of tornadoes. Tornadoes, that's more common. Earthquakes, maybe not so much. There's not a lot of things flying in the air with earthquakes.
Yeah. So like tornadoes, you got like wind. I mean, there is other stuff too. Like downed power lines is a big threat in any natural disaster. Mm-hmm. You can get electrocuted. And there's other stuff, but like by and large, like a flood is like get a bunch of water. It's pretty straightforward. Fire, though, it turns out, is pretty weird. Like, I was reading I have all these survival books that I started buying. Actually, I started buying years ago, but I got a bunch more when the pandemic hit around February. And I was reading these books about like how to survive fires, and it's so complicated. It's so much more complicated than I thought. It's very situation dependent. So like, I'm sure it's one of those things that if you know it really well, it's not actually that complicated. But if you're just skimming through a survival book, it's pretty fucking complicated. Like, there was one part in one of these books that said that under some circumstances, your best bet is to sprint directly into the fire. If you're in a forest fire, it's like, okay, if the wind is behind you and the dry kindling is in front of you, then you gotta do a backflip and then touch your nose and whatever. It's crazy shit. But yeah, there was a section that was all about like, here's how you can spot a fire that you should run straight into. And the idea is, a lot of people die very close to safety because they're running away from the fire, but the fire is burning everything up so fast that if they just ran through it, they would end up where everything is already burnt to a crisp and nothing is burning anymore.
Right.
Then they just have to not suffocate in the smoke.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but if you're just staring at a forest fire,
it's very intimidating.
How do you know that? Like, who's going to be like, oh, you know what? Here's what we should do. Just run straight into the fucking fire.
I mean, you just have to know it. It's like, what do you do when you see a bear,
Have you ever seen videos, like first-person videos of forest fires, like when they're doing the rapid spreading that they do? I only saw one video a couple years ago. It blew my mind how fast they move.
I saw a video recently. It was really fascinating. It was at I think some kind of soccer stadium, some kind of sports stadium, and a fire caught, and everyone had to evacuate onto the field. And it spread so quick, and it was such a crazy video because you just watch this fire just billow, and on the field, because it's so crowded, people can't see everything that's going on. Obviously they see the fire, they know that's happening, but the people on the field were cheering and singing songs because they were like, oh, this is so crazy, and like they're just kind of hyped up on the adrenaline of it all. And then, okay, so this video, by the way, is it was from the camera of the sports commentators. So the commentators were actually commenting on the fire. They were talking about like what's going on and stuff. And so you see on the field people like dancing and singing, and then you back up and you see cops trying to pull people out, like falling over just like from the smoke, or there's one person like on fire and they're trying to put him
Jesus.
out. Like, so it's like terrifying on one end, and then just like people celebrating. And it was such a crazy video because it was just a mix of like, just, you know, celebration and excitement and horror, and then just this fire just spread so quick. It just got huge in no time.
That's a whole other thing. Crowds, they're so dangerous, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you're describing is like they weren't even panicking, you know. Like imagine if they were panicking,
Right.
and all that.
Yeah,
other
it was
shit. Then you have
fine.
a stampede, you know.
Right. Yeah, it was fine. It was just they were just unaware of how bad it
Yeah.
was. They thought everyone was on the field,
'Cause
and they were just whatever. Like,
Because they're soccer hooligans.
right.
I was watching this Aussie Man reviews video.
Mm-hmm.
Have you watched any of those yet?
No.
Oh, it's great. You guys, everybody out there, check it out. Aussie Man reviews
It's
on Facebook.
OZZIE, right?
OZZY.
OZZY, okay.
Yeah, he's this Australian guy that just like reviews crazy videos, and he's hilarious. But he was doing a close calls video where people like almost died, and one of the clips was like people were throwing shit onto a soccer field like they do, and the soccer player just picked up something that looked like a little ball and just tossed it aside, and then it exploded. It was a fucking grenade.
Oh my god.
Yeah, he just picked it up like it was garbage and tossed it, and yeah.
Who the fuck was throwing a grenade?
I have no idea. I mean, it may have
Jesus.
been like maybe grenade isn't the right word.
Like a
It fucking
firecracker or
exploded,
something?
though. No, it was an incendiary. Like it was a weapon.
What's an
sure.
incendiary?
Like well, I guess that might not be the right word either. I think an incendiary is actually a charge that burns rather than explodes.
Okay.
I don't know. But anyway, I'm sure it's not hard to find if anybody wants to Google it. It's fucking
But you think
crazy.
it was like a weapon, not like...
Yeah, no, it looked like a small grenade to me.
Hmm.
I say small. I don't really have a lot of grenade experience except for Halo.
I mean, grenades are pretty small usually, right?
Yeah, but I mean the explosion. Like it was definitely big enough that if he was holding it, I would not be surprised if he died immediately.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, even firecrackers would blow your hand off. But
Oh,
this
yeah.
was a fucking
Like, full
grenade.
arm off.
Unfortunately, he threw it like right up against the wall. So like,
God.
was
Yeah, he could have thrown
partially-
it at some kid's face.
right? God,
Shouldn't laugh at
soccer
that.
people like I mean, throwing a grenade like that's not like that's common in a soccer game, but soccer people are commonly just crazy. What is the deal with that? Why is it just
As
soccer?
opposed to other sports?
Yes,
Oh, football fans are fucking crazy too.
not like soccer hooligans. Soccer
No?
hooligans riot all the time. Like people rush the field. People get the shit kicked out of them at soccer games. That does not happen at football games.
No, I
For
don't know.
our overseas friends, we're talking about.
European
another word for
soccer.
It's just football. It's just football.
American football is what they call
there
it.
you go.
Yeah.
American football. Yeah, I don't think. I mean, it's pretty rare to see somebody, really anybody, on the field or fighting.
Yeah, I guess not.
It's like soccer fans are like hockey players.
I was just thinking of hockey, but it is usually just the players that are
Yeah.
violent.
Yeah, like just they get within a couple inches of each other, and they're throwing fists.
Oh man, it reminds me of this picture. My friend is really into the Vikings. She lives in Vegas, and that's their hockey team is the Vikings. And she went to some really nice like party with some of the players and stuff, and she has this picture with one of them. And it's this guy, he's this hockey player. He is so gorgeous. He's like super handsome, tall, big smile on his face, all his front teeth missing.
No cheat.
And it's just the most gnarly picture because she looks gorgeous, he's fucking hot, but it's like, Jesus Christ, dude.
Yeah.
She said something to the effect of like he'll fix him when he retires because it's like, what's the point? They're just gonna get smashed
Yeah,
again.
I guess so. God, I like combat sports. I've never really done much striking martial arts, but jiu-jitsu, it's a combat sport, and I'm like, oh, I'm so tough for doing jiu-jitsu. But like people who box, I'm like, oh, that's crazy, getting all those head injuries. But then there's hockey players, who don't even like wear gear, and they just bare knuckle brawl in the middle.
And
Although
it's okay. Like, it's like part of the game.
Yeah, it's a weird culture. Like the refs they give them a certain amount of time. I think the deal is if they're standing up, they just let them just.
They're like,
slug
okay,
it
that's
out.
5 teeth. That's enough.
Right, it's crazy. And I mean, I will say, like when you watch a hockey fight, a lot of the hits aren't that hard, but they're so close, and they always have one hand gripping, so that when a punch lands, yeah, you could easily lose some teeth over that shit.
Oh, they're the Vegas Knights. I just remembered that.
Vegas Knights.
Yeah, that's one of those things someone's listening. They're like, oh my God.
The worst 2 hockey injuries I've seen were actually not even fights. One was a guy had his hand run over with a skate and lost some fingers. And then the other one was somebody skated over his neck and cut his jugular.
Did he die?
No, he somehow survived, but he immediately poured like a gallon of blood onto the ice. It was
God.
insane.
Did you see that video of the cop with his bike just running over some protester's head that was like lying on the ground?
No.
Totally intentional.
Bicycle or like
A bicycle. He was like, okay, so it was one of those things you had to watch it 3 times to really see what was happening. Because at first it looks like he just rides right over it. And it's definitely not an accident. It's like this protester's lying on his back. The cops are kind of in a line, standing, waiting. And then they start charging. And he goes right over his head. And the thing you notice if you watch it more than once is he's walking the bike. So it's not as bad. But it's still, it was totally intentional. Just like, fuck you. Just right over his head.
God. Why?
Because
So
some cops are
unnecessary.
dicks.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's nobody's surprised to hear that.
Yeah.
It's a tough time to be nuanced about things like cops. You know, there really seemed to be, or there was at least a few months ago. I don't know if this is still a thing or not, but there were a lot of people who I was surprised were condemning every single cop in the world.
Oh yeah, ACAB.
Yeah, and like, you know, when tensions are high, when emotions are high, you know, people get kind of silly. You
There's
know,
no good cops in a racist system.
Okay, is that the thing you heard somewhere?
Yeah, it's a chant they have here in Portland, and I'm
Okay.
sure elsewhere too.
That's cool. But this idea that there are no good cops, like it's one of those things where I don't get it. You know, like
It's
if
so
you
dehumanizing.
yeah, and if
Which is
it's-
ironic because that's why people are mad at cops, is because
Right.
they're dehumanizing people.
Yeah,
you
I
know?
mean, like the whole thing
killing
is
them
like
unnecessarily.
prejudice is bad, right?
Right.
Like that's you're not supposed to generalize. You know, I remember during this whole thing, I just happened to like a couple months ago when it was at its worst. I guess around July, probably. The protests and everything. I stumbled across this article about a cop, a black, I think she was a black female cop who had, I'm pretty sure, a white male partner. He was definitely male. A couple years ago, and they were at a call. I read this article in Vice. I can't remember where they were, so what state they were, or whatever. But anyway, they were on a call, and like they had to arrest this guy, and it was confrontational, it got physical. And then after they had the guy handcuffed, she was in the back seat of the car, and her partner was in the front seat with the suspect, and he just started like beating him while the guy was handcuffed behind his back. He's just like punching him in the face, and so she tried to stop him, right? So she tried to like pull him off the guy, and he I think he choked her and then punched her in the face.
Jesus.
She got like a black eye, might have broken a bone or something. So then she was fired for interfering with an arrest or something.
Wow.
And lost her pension. And she was like a new cop too. I think she's only on the job for like a few years. So she was arrested, or not arrested, but she was fired, lost her pension, all this shit. Then her partner was arrested like a couple months later for punching his new partner. And like 3 years later, she was still fighting in court just to be reinstated.
Ugh.
And like, this is an example of like, okay, you got a bad cop and you got a good cop, right?
Right.
Like this girl was trying to do the right thing. Not only did she get punched in the face by her partner, but she got fired over it and then spent 3 years in court. At least 3 years in court. It was still ongoing when I read the article. It's like, she's a bastard, really, for trying to save a suspect and then getting her whole life turned upside down?
Right.
No, he's the bastard,
Yeah.
right? That guy sucks. We can all agree that is a bad cop. She seemed all right, though, you know?
Yeah. I mean, based on that story, that's...
Maybe there's more to it.
Yeah.
Probably not. Anyway.
Probably not. What do you mean?
No, it sounds
There's
pretty
never more
straightforward.
of the story.
No. I mean, I will say that police, I think there probably are a lot more habitually violent police officers than you would see in most professions. Partly from the stress, but I think a lot of it has to do with the personality type that's drawn to power careers.
Yeah.
You see the same
What
thing.
kind of personality is going to be drawn to it now?
Yeah.
Everyone fucking hates them.
Yeah.
That's what scares me. It's like, look, I think there's a lot to be improved upon. I think we could do a lot better than we are with the police. I think they need
Sure.
more training. I think the war on drugs should be...
Yeah, if we could
We
just
should
stop
end that.
arresting people for drugs, God, think of how much that would solve.
I mean, that's what I feel like the conversation should be about with this Breonna Taylor case. And speaking of there being more to the story. I mean, for the longest time, it was that she was shot while she was asleep in her bed. And, recently it came out that it was like, well, no, the police had a warrant to come in there. These, two people woke up and her boyfriend shot at the cops, which he had every right to do because someone was just coming into his house, And then, of course, the cops shot back because they have guns too and they want to live. So people are just having this discussion of like whether or not it was okay for the cops to shoot at them and whether it was okay for the guy to shoot at them. And it's like, if there wasn't a war on drugs, this wouldn't be a fucking issue because they're going through his house because of a drug warrant. Yeah.
So here's the thing is that like what's getting all the attention is no-knock warrants. That's the big controversy. It's a type of warrant where you just kick in the door. I'm sure they're supposed to announce themselves after they kick in the door.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of mixed things about whether because I'm hearing that some people are saying that the cops did announce themselves, but it was probably something to the effect of like, we're coming in, and then immediately came in. And if they were asleep in their bed, they probably didn't hear that.
No, that's the distinction is with a normal warrant, they bang on the door and they say, hey, it's the police who have a warrant, let me in. And they give them a certain amount of time, not much time. Because if it's like drugs or something, you can flush drugs pretty quick. So they're not going to give them a lot of time for the most part. There's cases where if they know that they're going into a heavily armed house, like a compound or something, a lot of times they'll skip all the announcements and they'll just try to get the jump on them as quick as possible, which doesn't always go well. But you see the logic behind it. But no-knock warrants, I don't know a lot about the minutia, but I think that there has to be a case for them sometimes. Like if you're going to bust a cartel that's dealing machine guns or something.
Yeah, and slaughtering people. And
try to get in there before you're like, hey, I got a warrant. You want to check my paperwork?
Right.
Could get killed in the process. If it's a drug call and they're armed, which they were armed, like they had pictures on social media with weapons, like
which they're allowed to have.
Right.
They're citizens.
That's the thing is
we're
like
in America.
You have to consider that they have weapons or that they could because it's America, but that's not enough. I don't think, and granted I'm a layman, but I don't think that's enough to justify a no-knock warrant.
Well, especially in that case where they had, I think they had the suspect. I know the suspect wasn't, it was Breonna Taylor's like ex-boyfriend, and she was in bed with her current boyfriend.
Yeah,
so
but I think she was actually named in the warrant because she had allegedly been dealing drugs with her ex-boyfriend.
Yeah, I think there's some. Again, I'm sorry, guys. We haven't really looked this up very well.
By the way, if this is anybody's first time listening to the show, this is not a news show.
No,
this is just
We're not trying to educate you.
I have not read a single article about the Breonna Taylor case. I've read a lot of memes about it, and I've read a lot of tweets telling me how I should feel about it. So that's helpful.
I heard that like he was using like her phone number and her address and stuff like that. So she might have just been taken advantage of by him and that sort of thing. I don't know. My point is, like, it seems kind of crazy that they would barge into someone's house when they aren't even the suspect, And then on top of that, it's on drugs, and they were in plain clothes, and they turned their fucking body cams off.
Yeah, I think they used to live together, and he moved out. So like they had his old address, and I think she was like named on the warrant, but they weren't really after her. They were after. I think they were just after her ex, and they didn't know he moved out.
They had his ex. I heard he was already in custody.
Well, then why were they there?
I don't know. Sorry, guys.
Anyway, so the debate is with a no-knock warrant, they kick in the door, and then they're supposed to then say it's the police.
Yeah.
The key is just don't give them time to do anything before you're in the house. With a normal warrant, they announce first, and then before long they're going to kick in the door, depending on the circumstances. But that is an important procedural, tactical debate to be had, a policy debate, but it's. Like you said, we're so used to just ignoring the elephant in the room, the war on drugs. Such a travesty. I mean, it's just beyond comprehension.
Yeah.
And none of this would be an issue. And I mean,
I got really mad. Like the Hill, which I think is like a conservative website publication, they have this article it's seen circulating on Twitter, which was like, police just released these pictures of Breonna Taylor and her boyfriend, like, holding guns. And I'm like, so what?
Right, yeah.
Fuck you. Like, they're citizens. They're allowed to have guns.
Andy No tweeted that. I was disappointed.
I hate that shit. That does bother me when like something like this happens and it's like, well, they weren't perfect or like they had weapons and
Yeah,
it's
that's
like,
not
no,
that's not justification.
it's so irrelevant. Like,
and like
adds nothing to the discussion.
Andy No, like I feel, I have nuanced feelings about Andy No and his work. I think that he's often unfairly maligned. He's for those who don't know, he's a local Portland independent journalist. God, I don't even want to go into that. He's somewhere on the right.
Conservative leaning.
Yeah. But he's kind of painted as this like fascist enabler and white supremacist, even though he's Asian.
Gay,
right.
Parents are immigrants.
It's so hilarious to see the way people are just like, okay, all right, yeah, he's a white supremacist, sure. Anyway, he is unfairly maligned. He's physically attacked. He's been hospitalized. He had a brain hemorrhage when he was beaten at a rally like a year or two ago. He is a victim in a lot of cases, but that doesn't mean that all his journalism is good or responsible. And this is an example. He posted those photos, and it was like Snapchat story photos, like screenshots. And one of them had like, those little filters you can add to Snapchat, like words. It said partners in crime, and he posted it as the here they are, and they had guns, and he's like, here they are armed with evidence suggesting that she was participating in the crime. She's complicit in crime. Because she used a fucking Snapchat filter that said partners in crime. That's the kind of shit where I'm just like, Andy, come on, man.
Yeah.
Come on. You had some momentum when you got, your head kicked in by Antifa or whatever. Like, I was on your side there. I'm still on your side when it comes to physical violence. But dude, that's fucking ridiculous. He definitely.
I follow him on Twitter. I think part of his work is good, but it's very narrow. He's looking at this one scope, of it. He's definitely not a full picture nuance kind of guy. He will only focus on the riots. But that's good because, I mean, what he would say and what I agree with is like other people like aren't looking at that, and he's been like reporting in Antifa like long before, May or whatever when George Floyd got killed, because there were issues with it and people were ignoring it, and he was just like, look, these people are radicals, and they are.
Yeah, and you know what's funny is like I was defending him for a lot of that, and when I was defending him, this is kind of like I'm like hedging my bets here a little bit after the fact, but I was defending him on the basis that there were people I know and I respect who were maybe stretching the truth on the other side, that there's no such thing as Antifa, and just because Andy says he got a brain hemorrhage doesn't mean he did when he was beaten on camera. Like, that shit was ridiculous. But then I also follow Andy on Twitter, and I see, like, I remember like a month ago, like every tweet he posted, he was like, here's Antifa, here's Antifa, here's Antifa. Yeah. And I was trying to get his attention, like, how do you know that's Antifa, right? Just because there's people at a protest, maybe they're wearing a lot of black or something, but like, if they don't say they're Antifa, then how do you know? Right.
He is quick to anything he doesn't like as Antifa
protester.
Yeah, it is funny how much people hate him here. Like the other, like a few weeks ago, someone shot a Proud Boy during the Proud Boy rallies here, killed him in Portland, and like right when it came out, I was talking to someone, a friend of mine, and he was kind of asking me if I heard about it, and I'm like, yeah, it's it just happened, so just like anything, like you gotta wait a few days to get the full story, or even a few weeks sometimes.
Years.
Yeah. But I showed him. I was like, well, here's the only video I've seen, and it was Andy No had posted it. And he was like, oh, I don't trust anything Andy No posts. And I'm like, it's a video. Just watch it.
Right.
Yeah, just watch it. Like judge for yourself.
So many times I've had these arguments where it's like, what are you suggesting? He's some kind of fucking Steven Spielberg special effects magician? Like, it's a video with audio.
Yeah,
right?
And he's like, I think Andy's caption said something to the effect of like the guy shouting said like, fuck Trump supporters or whatever. And he's just like, oh, it's not clear that he said that. I'm like, okay, well, take it with a grain of salt. Just watch the video and decide for yourself. And I understand, like, also with videos are hard to trust because things are taken out of context. You really got to know what happened before and after and all that. But if you know that, then you could still watch the video and get some idea of what's going on.
Start with that. Like with a lot of things. And it is funny. You mentioned a couple times, like, videos like the cop running over the guy's head and other stuff. Like, there's a lot of video evidence that looks like one thing, and then somewhere around the 1,000th time you watch it, it's like, oh shit, things start shifting. Like you start noticing subtleties and timing issues.
Like that old man that got pushed over.
Right.
Remember that video? Because that video confused the fuck out of me.
That's right.
This was like a while ago. You guys, I mean, there's so much going on this year, as we said. But if you guys can remember, there was like a viral video that went around. I can't remember where it was, but it was like this old man. He was kind of like hobbling over to the police, and the police are doing their, what do they call it, where they just charge, you know?
Well,
and
they're walking.
Yeah, they're walking
aggressively.
So the old man was walking towards them, and these cops were walking against him, and like he falls over and cracks his head and immediately starts bleeding. And then what confused me about it was like it didn't look like they touched him at all. It looked like one of the guys just kind of like tapped him, like move back or whatever, and he falls back like all dramatically. And I wasn't thinking it was some conspiracy or whatever, faking it.
You just couldn't see the mechanics.
Yeah, I was just like, I don't see what's going on here. Like the way he falls, and then like you watched it a few times, and then you point out like, oh wait, this cop actually does shove him with his baton, but you just didn't really see it. I didn't see it the first time.
It was hard to see. I had to watch it frame by frame, and then full speed, frame by frame, full speed. I had to keep going back and forth. It probably took 20 viewings before I understood. So what's confusing about it is that there's 3 cops. It looks like there's only 2 cops that are involved because there's 2 cops approaching the old man, and he's just standing still at this point. And he's all decrepit and hunched over. It's a fucking pathetic video to see. So there's these 2 cops that are like approaching him, like kind of normal speed. They're kind of got their hands out, like you said. One of them kind of taps him, but then this third asshole with the nightstick comes in between them and behind them, and just charges him and knocks him over, and it busts his head open. He was in the hospital for like weeks, I think.
Yeah, it's terrible.
I don't even know what happened to him. But yeah, it was that third cop in the back, and like if you're just watching the video, yeah, it looks like the guy that tapped him has like the power of the force behind him or something.
Right.
It's hard.
Or he'd like maybe, fell backwards himself, but I'm like, I don't think he would have done that on purpose, just crack his head open.
No, because he was like, the story there was that he was a long-term civil protester. Like he was like a career protester. He'd been doing it for probably decades, and he was kind of a nuisance to the local cops. He was he's that annoying, crotchety old man. You can't do things like knock him over because he's so old. You know? And so he was the only protester there. Like if you watch the video, it's like 30 cops or something, and this old man just like, what are you gonna do, sonny boy? And so like that's the backstory. But yeah, like that one asshole cop's just like, calm down, man. Like if you're gonna arrest this old dude, arrest him. Like that's gonna look bad enough, But I get it.
Yeah.
You have a curfew or whatever, you clear an area. You got to do what the cops say within reason. What got me too about that is that I can't remember where it was either, but they immediately fired at least one, maybe all 3 of the officers. I can't remember, but they did something. They disciplined them or fired them or something. And then like the next day after that, like 30. I think it was the emergency response unit, like 30 cops assigned to some emergency squad, all resigned. And the story was that they all resigned in protest because their buddy had been fired. And I was just like, that doesn't make any sense. Because watching that video, like, yeah, there is the blue wall of silence. Cops stick together. I get that. But at the same time, for all the cops on this one emergency squad to simultaneously resign when clearly they were in the wrong, or this guy was anyway, didn't make sense. So I looked more into it. It turns out, at least according to 1 or 2 articles I read, so these articles came out like 2 days after that said that they got anonymous tips from the cops that resigned and said actually what happened was the union refused to support them and provide legal counsel because they were so out of control. Their own union backed out, and then they said, we're not going to be cops if you don't have a union and legal representation. That's why they retired, because they had no support from their own department or union. And then the department was
Which you would think left-wing people, even though a lot of them don't like cops right now, would support that, because we're all supposed to be for the working class and unions and all that.
Right, but then the union is the one that planted the story. It was a union representative that called the newspaper and said they all resigned because of how they're being treated for knocking this old man over, almost killing him. Like, that's the thing is like, there's so many layers to every single thing that happens, and so many people are lying, and it's not just that, but there's the bullshit thing. I know I sound like a broken record, but the Harry Frankfurt concept of bullshit is increasingly relevant. It's this idea. You got those books, right? Have you read them yet?
I started to.
So Harry Frankfurt is this academic philosopher who, I think it was his thesis, maybe his PhD thesis or something. He wrote this little book, maybe 70 pages or something, called On Bullshit. And this is one of the things I love about academic philosophers. They can just go on weird little avenues like that. But the whole thesis was about what is bullshit. When people say bullshit, like, what are they talking about? And philosophers are really good at teasing out details and stuff. Anyway, he basically paints this picture. His thesis is essentially that bullshit doesn't have to be false. It's just that whoever's speaking bullshit doesn't care whether it's true or false.
Mm-hmm.
They're more concerned with their side, or making a rhetorical point, or using force in an argument, or the broader philosophical background, which is what you see with a lot of political tribalism today. I have liberal friends defending things that are absurd because, like me, they believe in a liberal ideology, but they lose sight of the details, and it's not usually fully conscious, but it's not fully unconscious either. They're just more concerned with winning because they know that the fascists can't win. The fascists on all sides, though. Anyway, so yeah, it's this idea of, it's not that they're always lying. It's that they're so full of the argument that you can never tell based on what they're saying whether they have any basis in fact or not.
Yeah, everything's just so narrative driven.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah, it is.
I hope it's not. I mean, it's probably cyclical, right? Like, it's probably one of those things throughout history that, this is one of my biggest questions right now with existential risk. It is true that, like, every generation thinks the world is ending. And there are periods when the world kind of does end, you know, like civilization does collapse through history. And there's things like wars, you know, world wars and shit. Bad shit happens for sure. But we have disruptive technology that's increasing. And it's disruptive on a scale, like, it's meaningful that it's disruptive. And it's getting more disruptive. So, like, things like disinformation or confusion or bullshit, because of things like Twitter, it has this platform that wasn't there before. And I do worry that, granted, there was propaganda before, and, you know, there was control of the masses through media and whatever, but not, it's like you don't even have to do anything. You know, like Russia's job to destabilize America is pretty fucking easy right now. A couple of Twitter bots, you know?
I know.
And shit just spreads. You can barely tell the difference between a Trump supporter and a Twitter bot half the time, you know?
Dude, I'm kind of embarrassed to say this, but I didn't realize how to obviously spot a bot until recently. Like, the thing to do is, like, if it's a name and then a bunch of random numbers after it, like, that's usually a bot. And I find myself, like, when I'm going through Twitter, I'm just like, what the fuck, this fucking idiot? And then I'm like, wait a minute, look at the name. And it's almost always a bot. And now I feel like, it's like, okay, I'm pretty savvy online, you know? I'm not like some boomer.
Okay, boomer.
I'm an elder millennial, you know. I know how internet works. And I kind of pride myself on being a little bit more savvy than some people. You know, I spot fake things when other people don't. Other people my own age, where I'm just
You're
like,
better
come on,
than I
guys.
am half the time, really.
But so the fact that I only just realized that obvious, like, this is a bot sort of thing is, like, that's concerning, because obviously tons of other people are clearly falling for it and getting mad the same way I get that kind of knee-jerk reaction. And then
see, that's interesting, because I actually have not noticed that on Twitter with propaganda bots. What I've noticed there, I've only been in a few threads where I could tell that they were bots. And it was because they would say almost the same response repeatedly to different comments. They would repeat certain phrases. Like it was almost like a non-English speaking person translated the perfect phrase and then couldn't manage to just freewheel it when somebody responded. So they're just like, oh, let's just add a word here and there. And it's like 5 versions of the same comment. And I'm like, well, that's a bot. There was one case in particular. I remember it was this story that was breaking. I think it was somewhere in Texas where, like, God, what was the story? I think it was like, I don't know, George Soros was bringing in busloads of Antifa to take over or something. It was just like some crazy, like, the cops are telling everybody to just stay indoors and cover your head, you know? And it's like, this is clearly not true. Some Texas town is being overrun by Antifa. Like, come on. And that was just all bots. But what you're talking about, I know what you're talking about because of my Instagram DMs. Like, twice a day, I get, like, Marlena _F75462 wants to send you a DM. Do you want to accept? And I'm like, no, that's a bot. I get sex bots on Instagram.
Oh yeah, the sex bots are usually pretty easy to spot.
It is funny that they use that pattern all the time. It's like name _numbers.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's ones that don't. But yeah when I've noticed, I'm getting more savvy on Twitter to spot it. Well, first of all, if it's just like they'll say something so stupid and so antagonistic, and not that there aren't real people like that are stupid and antagonistic, but like it'll just be particularly it'll just be particularly like, what?
Yeah.
And then it's like, and then I'll notice the name, and then I go to the Twitter account, and it's usually
Created yesterday.
well, yeah, that's usually a good giveaway. But then also, like, someone who doesn't make their own tweets, they're just retweeting a bunch of stuff, and then like a few comments on things here and there, and it's usually not that many, but the ones that are just like so. It's just a strong, crazy opinion that you're like, if this person were real, they would be talking about this a lot, or they would be tweeting more. It seems odd that it's just like they've had this account. Yeah, exactly. It's very isolated.
You know what's funny is I just realized why that naming convention works with the name and then a bunch of numbers. I used to code. I programmed some, and I would have to test things like registration forms on websites, and I would automate the tests. And so I would actually code it to take my first name and then the plus symbol and then generate a string of random numbers and letters so that I could create like thousands of tests without having to manually create a bunch of email addresses. That's how they're doing it. I mean, granted, they're doing it in a much more sophisticated way because social media platforms like Twitter are really good at blocking automated shit like that. They've blocked me from fucking all kinds of shit that I'm not automated, you know? Like I'll just create an account. I created an account like a year or two ago for Instagram, and it just immediately blocked me for violating the terms of use. I literally username, password, email address, sign up, you have been banned from Instagram. Like, just that fast. But somehow these fucking Russian bots, no problem. They're just getting in there.
Well, my Sierra Lynch Twitter account's been suspended for almost 3 months now. Still waiting for them
Your
to...
second one.
Yeah, my second one. My first one's permanently suspended. Anytime I try to appeal that, I get, within 2 seconds, I get an automated email saying, you are permanently suspended. Stop trying to appeal. We are not reading your appeals. So I was like, all right. But this time around, when I try to appeal, they send me a message saying, you already have an open ticket. Please wait till we... take care of that before adding more. So I'm still like...
That's progress.
Yeah, I think they'll come around eventually. And if you go to Twitter support, they have a tweet... Well, they have a thread about how they're trying to crack down on automated accounts and blah, 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 and it's not a perfect system. But the one they pinned from the thread basically says that like they're overwhelmed right now and it's going to take longer than usual to get back to people from the support tickets. So...
Yeah, that's been happening a lot.
Just wait and see, I guess.
Another thing since the pandemic hit, as you know, I do some of my side consulting work is taking down impersonation accounts for clients. And Instagram was like, 9 months ago or something, Instagram was on that shit. If I followed the process as they expected, they would take down like 40 accounts in an hour. And then like a month ago, I had an impersonation account for a client that took like 6 or 7 weeks, and it was just a runaround. Like they went from not answering for 2 weeks to asking for all kinds of bullshit information, claiming I didn't give it to him, even though I did. And like this was an account that was actively scamming people. It was defrauding people while impersonating my client. I went to Gmail because they were using a Gmail account. Gmail was just like, contact the FBI. Gmail actually has on their help form, it's like, oh, if you suspect fraud, here's the link to the FBI's Internet Crime Division. So I opened a fucking case with the FBI. By the time Instagram got around to closing this account, it literally took probably 40 emails over 7 weeks. It used to be an hour.
And meanwhile, they shut down sex workers just like
that.
Oh,
yeah, no problem. And then I had another one. It was a doxing case. And this guy was harassing this woman on Twitter, like posting her home address and photos and like really creepy, awful, dangerous shit, and they were just giving her the runaround. And then that one I did notice, though, that it was faster. They're starting to get back up to speed, and they also provided actual helpful information in the process and disabled the account. But, like, I am kind of curious how, like, what are their processes that they're so broken by the pandemic, I mean, this is all work that you should have been doing it remotely anyway. And if I know these companies like I think I do, they were probably using low-paid overseas workers in the first place. So, like, they go out of their way to use an expendable workforce for manual or for tedious, repetitive work. So, like, the fact that they were this unprepared for,
Yeah, it's weird.
Because, I mean, there's people like Postmates is doing fine,
They're probably thriving right now.
Yeah, they're doing great.
Yeah.
Like, how
Amazon's
Twitter
doing great.
can't take down fucking fraud, you know? Like, I mean,
Well, I wonder if it has something to do with the fact that like they're not really making money.
yeah, I wonder about that. I mean, they do have a shitload of well, I think now they might be making money now. But I know for like the first 10 years of their existence, they had no revenue model.
Yeah, I don't
Like,
even think they thought about it. They just
No.
wanted to create this like
They just-
social media app, and then later they're like, oh wait, we should probably make some money from
Well,
this.
yeah. Well, they're like, it's a weird case because what happened with Twitter is that literally 10 years in, everybody's like, should I invest in this? Because it's not like they were breaking even. They literally had no revenue. There was no transactions. They had no advertising. They didn't charge anything. All of their money, like probably billions of dollars, was just thrown at them by investors because they had so many users. It's like that's a bubble,
Right.
You know, like they're just like, oh, you have 500 million people on your
I have an
platform.
audience. I mean,
So
that is
here's
worth
500
something.
million. Oh, it's worth a lot
Yeah.
for sure, but it's also it's a weird case, you know, because like I would see the CEO in interviews and he's just like fucking loaded, just like, yeah, I'm doing great. I'm just like got like 50 million in the bank, you know. It's like, I mean, yeah, you did a cool thing and all, but normally businesses have to make money, you know.
Yeah.
Like this is like a government combined with a monopoly and like some kind of weird hybrid that doesn't even have taxes.
Yeah.
You know, they're just like just making money on people. They probably they probably started doing. They probably started selling data.
I was just thinking that.
Ah, that must be it. And I think they started doing ads too. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, you see ads. You see sponsored
And
tweets.
promoted tweets.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
So we have an election right around the corner.
Yeah.
And a president with COVID, which, by the way, Kevin is going to owe me $10 in about 5 days.
We'll see.
We made a really sick bet.
Yeah, we did. I bet drunkenly. When I heard Trump had COVID, I bet that he was going to die in 2 weeks or less. And then the next day I was like, why did I say 2 weeks? You know, because like he is an older guy. He doesn't appear to be all that healthy. I mean, I will say he's pretty robust. You know, he's out of
he's an
shape
ox.
physically, but he's got energy. People say it's amphetamines.
Could be.
Whatever. He impresses me.
He's looking healthier than Biden, that's for sure.
I don't know about that. I mean,
Well,
in the debates,
maybe
Biden,
like younger, like
Biden
more
had a certain
energetic.
glow. You know,
He just seems like such an old man to me.
Weird kind of. Yeah,
I kind of forget that Trump is like an
Trump
old
is
man.
like a drunk, belligerent old man.
Sure.
He's just like he's got his energy from like rum or something.
Yeah. I'm not trying to
But-
compliment him. I just
Right.
think that.
No,
yeah.
no. I look.
he has
look,
more vitality.
I'm no Trump fan, but yeah. I mean, the fact that he's got the energy he does, whether it's amphetamines or anything else, that's impressive. Anyway, yeah, but he is in his 70s, right? He's like 74, 75,
Something like that.
Clearly not in shape, and so yeah, I thought maybe COVID would take him out. I don't really know that
They're
Figures.
postponing the next debates. Did you hear that?
they canceled it.
Oh, they canceled it.
Yeah, because Trump refused to do a televised debate or a remote debate. They wanted to do.
Oh, because he's
They wanted to
sick.
do it remote because he has fucking COVID, right?
Right.
So they wanted to do it, you know, from a distance, not in the same room with him, so people don't die,
Right.
right? And he's like, "No, I'm not doing it." And they're like, "Okay, it's canceled then. Fuck off."
So I want to shake Biden's hand.
It's like what are you? Like why?
He's such a
Why?
brat.
I know, like before he had COVID, he didn't want to do televised debate or not televised, but what is it called?
In
I guess
person?
remote. No,
Oh,
no,
remote.
not in
Okay,
person.
Yeah.
He didn't want to do, you know, long
Skype
distance
debates.
Yeah, he didn't want to do
Zoom debates.
debates. And I thought, you know, like that's irresponsible because you know, you could get infected, you could cause other people to come together. Like people could die because you're stubborn. But now he fucking has COVID and he's still like, "No, I'm not doing it." So they fucking canceled the whole thing. Like what a child. What is this? How are people still like, "No, he's right. He's fine. Don't worry about COVID." I just heard it was the third leading cause of death in America.
Oh, Jesus. I didn't know that.
I don't know if that's true, everybody. I just heard that. Again, this is not a news show.
We're
This is
just-
not journalism.
Yeah, this is just two idiots with a podcast,
But I
like
mean,
most podcasts.
I wouldn't be surprised, though. I mean, Google it, you know? I mean, for years I've been appalled that the number 5 leading cause of death in America is doctors.
Oh, God.
It's called iatrogenic death. Look it up. Number 5.
Google
number
it. You have
5.
2 things to Google.
The number 5 cause of death is doctors.
Like Bosch surgeries? Or
Usually it's misdiagnosis. Did you know that
So that's
over
kind of
20
indirect, right? It's not. That's indirect.
Oh, it's not like doctors like stabbing people or something.
Well, I'm sure they weren't doing that, but just like actual physical negligence, like giving them the wrong medication, maybe.
Yeah, medication conflicts, undiagnosed diseases, treating somebody for the wrong disease, not treating their underlying disease, medication interactions.
Yeah.
And then there was that stat, something I think it was over 20% of all diagnoses in the United States are wrong.
Ugh.
20%.
It's amazing.
I told my doctor that, and he was surprised it wasn't higher.
Oh, jeez.
He had only been a doctor for a year.
That's why
at
you
the
get a
time,
second
though.
opinion, I guess.
Yeah.
A third or fourth.
Yeah.
Which is easy to do in our country, you know. Healthcare is just it's free, really.
Oh, it's great. There's so many healthcare resources, and it's so cheap. It's practically free. They're just handing out healthcare.
Oh god, I gotta wrap this up. I gotta pee.
Yeah, I figured you did. Hey, thanks everybody for listening. And I'm not even gonna say send us your questions. I mean, if you want to send us your questions, I like questions. We got a backlog though. Like I feel like it's just something I say now. So get at us. Follow us on Twitter. Tell your friends. And send us money on Patreon. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.